Happy Gandhi Jayanti to all of you. I am Aisha Roshmi of class 12A, and today on October 2nd, Gandhi Jayanti, we celebrate the birth anniversary of a man who continues to inspire the whole world with his values and vision. He shows us that true strength does not lie in weapons or violence, but in truth, simplicity, and courage. He stands against one of the strongest empires in history, not with armies or guns, but with the powerful weapons of non-violence and justice. That man is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, whom the world lovingly calls Mahatma, meaning great soul. For us, Gandhi is not only the father of our nation, but also a teacher who reminds us every day that peace is stronger than war and honesty is greater than fear. His message is alive even today, guiding us to build a world where harmony, equality, and humanity stand above everything else. On this Gandhi Jayanti, let us not just remember him, but also try to live by the principles he stands for, because that is the best tribute we can give to Mahatma.
We'll take it from here, Roshmi. My name is Michelle PV from 10th B. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, later known to the world as Mahatma Gandhi, was born on October 2, 1869 in a small coastal town of Porbandar in western India. His family belonged to the modest but respected merchant caste. His father served as a local administrator, while his mother, deeply religious, shaped his values of truth, compassion, and self-discipline. As a boy, Gandhi was shy, quiet, and by his own admission, not a brilliant student. He struggled to speak confidently in front of others and often kept to himself. Yet, beneath all this modest exterior, he absorbed powerful lessons from traditions around him, Hinduism, Jainism, and other faiths that emphasized simplicity, tolerance, and above all, ahimsa, the principle of non-violence towards all living beings. In his teenage years, Gandhi was neither rebellious nor an outspoken, but he showed an unusual honesty in one story. During a school inspection, the teacher encouraged him to copy from a classmate to avoid embarrassment. Gandhi refused, choosing truth over marks, a small act to foreshadow the integrity that the world guide his entire life. In 1888, at the age of 19, Gandhi traveled to London to study law. This was a dramatic change, a timid young man living in India for the first time to live in a foreign culture. At first, he tried to fit in buying Western suits, taking lessons in French, even attempting ballroom dancing, but soon he realized that the external appearance did not define one's worth. Instead, Gandhi turned inward. He read deeply about his world's religions, Hindu scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, and also the Bible and the Quran. He discovered that truth and morality were not bound to a single faith, but were universal. This exploration broadened his worldview and strengthened his moral foundation.
1893, a young Mohandas Gandhi, then just 24 years old, accepted a one-year legal contract in South Africa. He arrived with a little more than hope for a steady income and some professional experience. But what awaited him was a turning point that would define the rest of his life. One cold evening, while traveling on a train from Durban to Pretoria, Gandhi, though holding a valid first-class ticket, was ordered by a European passenger to move to third class simply because he was an Indian. When Gandhi refused, he was thrown out at Pietermaritzburg station. Humiliated, shivering in the winter night, he sat on the platform and asked himself a question that would change history. Long mission. Gandhi stayed in South Africa for over 2 decades, far longer than he had ever planned. He saw with his own eyes how Indians and other non-European communities were denied basic rights, forced to carry passes and treated as a second-class citizen. It was here that Gandhi developed his philosophy of satyagraha, meaning truth, force. To him, resisting injustice was not about attacking the oppressor, but about appealing to their conscience. Non-violence, he believed, was not weakness, it was the highest form of strength. He organized campaigns where Indians publicly burned their discriminatory passes, marched peacefully in protest, and accepted imprisonment rather than submit. Gandhi himself was jailed multiple times, but instead of breaking his spirit, prison only deepened his resolve. Each arrest, each act of quiet defiance drew more people to his cause. The timid lawyer who once struggled to speak in court had transformed into a leader who inspired thousands. South Africa was his training ground, the place where Gandhi discovered his voice, his methods, and his destiny. The lessons he learned there would later be carried back to India.
In 1915, after more than 20 years in South Africa, Gandhi returned to his homeland. He was no longer the shy, unsure lawyer who had once left for London. He returned as a man transformed, carrying with him the moral authority of one who had stood up to injustice and triumphed without violence. Indians across the country welcomed him as a rising leader, though Gandhi himself remained humble, preferring the title of servant rather than hero. Instead of immediately diving into politics, Gandhi chose to understand the heart of India. He spent months traveling from village to village, walking barefoot along dusty roads, sitting with farmers, and listening to the poor. What he saw shocked him. Rampant poverty, crushing taxes, and people stripped of dignity under colonial rule. It was here that Gandhi realized India's strength did not lie in its cities or in its politicians, but in its villages and its ordinary people. He believed that freedom would be meaningless if peasants continued to starve and if Indians remained dependent on foreign goods. So he urged self-reliance. He introduced the spinning wheel, charkha, as a symbol of independence, asking every Indian to weave their own cloth, khadi, instead of buying British textiles. To him, this simple act of spinning was not just economic resistance, it was moral resistance, a way to reclaim dignity. By the time Gandhi formally joined the Indian National Congress, he was already more than a political figure. He was seen as a moral teacher, a man who embodied the values he preached. His arrival marked the beginning of a new phase in India's freedom struggle, one that would not rely on violence or bitterness, but on truth, simplicity, and the unshakable strength of ordinary men and women.
By the year 1920, Gandhi had emerged as the moral voice of India. After his return from South Africa, he spent years traveling across villages, listening to peasants, workers, and ordinary citizens. He saw their struggles firsthand: poverty, exploitation, and humiliation under colonial rule. And when the British responded with harsh repression, especially the Jallianwala Bagh massacre of 1919, where hundreds of innocent Indians were killed, Gandhi knew the time had come for mass action. But Gandhi's vision was unlike any movement India had seen before. He called upon the nation to resist not with violence or rebellion, But with the power of non-cooperation, his message was simple yet revolutionary. If we refuse to cooperate with an unjust system, that system cannot survive. The movement spread like wildfire. Gandhi urged Indians to boycott British goods, particularly foreign clothes, which symbolized economic dependence. Across the country, people set aside imported clothes and took up the spinning wheel to make their own clothes, called khadi. The act was simple yet deeply powerful. Each thread spun was a declaration of self-reliance. Students left government schools in thousands. Teachers resigned and lawyers gave up their practice in colonial courts. Ordinary people stopped attending British institutions, choosing instead to build their own. For the first time, farmers, laborers, merchants, and even women felt they were part of a shared nation struggle. Gandhi had given them a cause that was both political and personal. What made this movement unique was its discipline. Marches, demonstrations, and strikes were carried out peacefully, even when faced with arrests or police beatings. Gandhi believed that true courage was not in striking back, but in enduring suffering without hatred. However, the movement also revealed the challenges of maintaining non-violence on such a massive scale. In 1922 at Chowri Chowra, a protest turned violent, leading to the death of policemen. Gandhi was heartbroken. He felt responsible, believing that the people were not yet fully prepared for non-violent struggle. In an act of moral courage, he suspended the movement, even though it was at its peak. Critics called this a mistake, arguing that he lost momentum. But for clear, freedom achieved through bloodshed would not be true freedom. The non-cooperation movement may not have delivered independence immediately, but it did something far more powerful. It awakened millions of Indians to the idea that they had the strength to resist. It was the first time the colonial rulers felt the ground beneath them begin to shake.
By 1930, Gandhi understood that India's struggle for freedom needed a symbol that was simple, universal, and deeply human. He found it in something as ordinary as salt. Salt was a necessity of life, yet the British taxed it heavily, forcing even the poorest families to pay for what nature gave freely. Gandhi saw this injustice as the perfect way to unite India. For him, salt was more than a mineral. It was a symbol of dignity and self-respect. On March 12, 1930, Gandhi set out from his Sabarmati ashram near Ahmedabad with 78 followers. Their goal was the village of Dandi, nearly 240 miles away, where the Arabian Sea met the shore. Gandhi walked slowly, staff in hand, dressed in his simple white cloth. But as he moved from village to village, crowds began to gather. People left their homes and fields just to walk a few steps with him. By the time he reached the halfway point, thousands had joined, transforming the march into a river of humanity. For 24 days, Gandhi and his companions walked under the hot sun, covering about 10 miles a day. At every stop, Gandhi spoke not of violence or revenge, but of courage, truth, and self-reliance. He urged people to weave their own cloth, grow their own food, and above all, to believe that freedom was within their grasp. His message was simple. With every handful of salt we make, we break the chains of our slavery. Newspapers around the world reported on his progress, and soon the eyes of the world were fixed on India. Finally, on April 6, 1930, Gandhi reached Dandi. At sunrise, he walked to the seashore, bent down, and lifted a small lump of salty mud. With that gesture, he had broken the salt law. It was a simple act, yet one of immense power. Millions of Indians soon followed his example, boiling seawater, making their own salt, and openly defying the British. The British authorities reacted with force. Thousands were arrested. Police attacked peaceful demonstrators. Gandhi himself was imprisoned. But the image of a frail, unarmed man challenging an empire with nothing but a pinch of salt captured the imagination of the world. Leaders in other countries began to see India's struggle not as a rebellion, but as a moral fight for justice. The Salt March did not bring independence immediately, but it shifted the balance. It showed Indians their collective strength and proved that nonviolence, discipline, and truth could be stronger than any weapon. With every grain of salt lifted from the earth, Gandhi had not only defied the British Raj, he had given India and the world a timeless lesson, that even the smallest act of courage can shake the foundations of the mightiest empire.
By the early 1940s, the world was at war. Britain had pushed India into the Second World War without even asking its leaders. Indian soldiers were fighting and dying on distant battlefields, while their own motherland remained in chains. For Mahatma Gandhi, this was simply unacceptable. He argued that if Britain claimed to fight for freedom and democracy abroad, it had no moral right to deny those very values to India. In August 1942, Gandhi and the Indian National Congress gave a bold call that shook the empire, the Quit India movement. Gandhi's words were short, powerful, and unforgettable. Do or die. We shall either free India or die in attempt. With his message, he urged the British to leave at once, and he called upon Indians to rise in united, non-violent resistance. The response was immediate and electric. From villages to cities, people poured into the streets. Strikes, boycotts, and demonstrations erupted everywhere. For the first time, students, farmers, workers, ordinary men and women came together with one voice. It felt as though the whole nation was on the move. The British struck back with force. Overnight, Gandhi and almost all Congress leaders were arrested. Thousands of protesters were jailed, and many were even shot down in cold blood. Though Gandhi had preached non-violence, in some places anger spilled over and protest turned violent. Still, his presence, even from prison, remained the soul of the movement. His repeated, fast, and fragile health captured the whole world's attention, turning India's struggle into a moral battle as much as political one. The Quit India movement did not drive the British out immediately, yet it marked a turning point. After 1942, the British knew that India's demands for freedom was unstoppable. And when independence finally came in 1947, people looked back on Quit India as a cry of unity, courage, and sacrifice that no empire could silence.
By the mid-1940s, the British Empire was exhausted. The Second World War had drained its strength, and the Indian independence movement was too powerful to ignore. Gandhi's voice, echoing for decades with the call of non-violence, had united millions. Yet, as freedom drew near, India also faced its deepest wound, division. For years, tensions had grown between Hindus and Muslims. Gandhi believed in a united India, where people of all faiths could live together as equals. But the demand for a separate Muslim homeland, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah and the Muslim League, had gained momentum. Gandhi pleaded for unity, reminding people that religious difference should never tear apart a nation. But history moved in another direction. In 1947, the British finally agreed to leave India. On August 15th, the tricolor flag rose over an independent nation. Crowds filled the streets with joy, chanting and singing. After nearly 200 years of colonial rule, India was free. Yet freedom came with heartbreak. The land was divided into two nations, India and Pakistan. Partition unleashed a storm of violence. Entire villages were uprooted. Families who had lived together for centuries were forced to leave their homes overnight. Hindus and Sikhs fled from newly formed Pakistan, while Muslims crossed into Pakistan from India. In the chaos, over 1 million people lost their lives, and millions more became refugees. Gandhi was devastated. For him, independence without unity felt incomplete. While leaders celebrated in Delhi, Gandhi walked barefoot through the streets of Bengal, trying to calm riots with nothing but his presence. He fasted, prayed, and pleaded with people to see each other as brothers, not enemies. His words carried moral power, and in some places, his fasts did succeed in halting bloodshed. But the pain of partition left deep scars. Though frail and often heartbroken in these final years, Gandhi remained steadfast. He never lost faith in non-violence, even when surrounded by hate. For him, freedom was not merely the end of British rule. It was the beginning of a moral journey for India, a test of whether the nation could live by the principles of truth and compassion. The dream of independence had been achieved, but Gandhi's work was not over. He knew that political freedom meant little without harmony, justice, and respect for all. His last days were spent reminding India of this truth.
On January 30, 1948, just months after India's independence, Gandhi was walking to his evening prayer meeting in Delhi when he was shot by an assassin. The man who had carried a nation with truth and non-violence fell to the ground with the words "Hey Ram" on his lips. India had won freedom, but it had lost the soul who had guided it there. Gandhi's death was a shock, not only to India but the entire world. Leaders across continents mourned him. Albert Einstein said, "Generations to come will scars believe that such a one as is ever in flesh and blood walked upon this earth." Gandhi had proven was that lasting change would be achieved without hatred, without armies, and without weapons. His philosophy of ahimsa, non-violence, and satyagraha, the force of truth, did not die with him. They become a torch for others to carry. Martin Luther King drew inspirations from Gandhi to lead the civil rights movement in United States. Nelson Mandela turned to Gandhi's example in the fight against apartheid in South Africa. Across Asia, Africa, and beyond, countless leaders discovered that courage and conscience would defeat oppression. Within India, Gandhi's ideals continued to shape society. The spinning wheel, once symbol of defiance, is now at the heart of India's national flag. His call for simplicity, self-reliance, and compassion remains a challenge and guide for a nation still striving to balance progress with justice. Gandhi's greatest legacy is not in monuments or politics. It is in the way he showed ordinary people their own power. He reminded the world that true strength lies not in dominating others, but in mastering oneself, not in raising weapons, but in raising one's voice, not in hatred, but in love. Today, Gandhi's life continues to ask us a question. In the face of injustice, will we choose violence and anger, or will we choose courage and compassion? His answer was clear and it echoes through history. Non-violence is not a weapon of the weak, but the strongest force humanity has ever known.